At this point in my list, you probably started to notice a theme, that many of the games that made the cut are retro-inspired 2D side-scrollers with a heavy emphasis on fluid gameplay, bright and colorful art styles, and rewarding based on the player's ability to overcome tough challenges, topping it off with endearing characters that help add a little something extra to the experience. And the game taking the #1 spot on my list is no exception to this, and yet does all these things exceptionally well. So allow me a few moments of your time to give you the rundown. The Messenger is a retro gaming tour de force. It is a love letter to fans that grew up with games like Revenge of Shinobi and Ninja Gaiden Classic. And it's something that, for me, came completely out of left field, even though I had been following its development long before its release. It's a 2D side-scrolling action platformer with a twist that I will be revealing in this video, for the sake of describing what it is that makes the game great. So if you're concerned about spoilers, this is your chance to back out now, go play the game, and then come back. At first glance, the Messenger may give you the impression that it's simply trying to play on nostalgia of replicating the look and feel of the games that came out during the 8-bit era. But that couldn't be further from the truth. It's a game that not only masters the style of gameplay that its inspirations have done before it, but also evolves it over the course of the game in a way that's so engaging and compelling that I found myself struggling to put the controller down after hours of playtime. Like I said at the top of this video, the games on my list have mastered the concept of gameplay flow, and the Messenger does this beautifully. While simplistic at first glance, there's hidden depth within it. You control our ninja protagonist having to run from screen to screen, cutting down foes with his sword, true to the style of the classic Ninja Gaiden games. But instead of simply cutting them down, it integrates movement into this mechanic to keep momentum going as you play. On killing an enemy or simply hitting a breakable object while airborne, the player gains the ability known as Cloud Step, which allows them to double jump. This opens up the doorway of possibilities such as bouncing off enemies while killing them and practically never touching the ground. Of course, that is something for more advanced players, but over the course of my time with the game, I was naturally bouncing off of enemies and cloud stepping with ease. And that's an important part of any action game, when interacting with its mechanics doesn't feel like a chore, but instead feels natural. The Messenger is certainly not a walk in the park, as the game slowly ramps up difficulty by testing your ability to cloud step through finely tuned and harrowing platforming challenges. You'll find yourself making mistakes and missing jumps, but it seldomly ever feels unfair. When you do miss a jump or fail to stick a landing, you know very well why. Upon your first death, the game introduces a new character that sarcastically quips and teases you during each game over screen. But he's not just there to make you feel bad about dying. He's also your incentive to not die, as the game uses him as punishment by having him steal crystal shards you find in-game as a way of paying off your debt to him. At first I felt like this might have been a bit much, considering the game's checkpoints alone aren't all that forgiving. But when finding out just how little of the currency he actually does take upon death, the impact lessened over time. The in-game currency can be used to purchase new abilities and character upgrades from the shop that you find scattered throughout each level. These shops also act as checkpoints to respawn upon death. Additionally, the shop introduces what I found to be one of, if not the best new character of the year, the Shopkeeper. There are very few times in a game where I find myself actively seeking out an NPC for the sake of seeing what new dialogue they have to say, but the Messenger had me doing exactly that. Each time I stumbled upon the shop, I would enter just to talk to the shopkeeper even if I wasn't there to buy anything. The shopkeeper gives off a mysterious aura about himself as he's always cloaked in blue robes with 2 red eyes, and you never actually see his face. But the things he says to you in the shop are what make him such a charming character. Not only does he give you advice should you ask him to, but he also offers the option to tell you lore about the levels you traverse, and even tell you stories if you ask him to. The stories are perhaps some of the best moments, as each one has a lesson behind it. He even cracks the occasional bad joke or two, and the banter between him and the main character is sure to give you a good chuckle. What makes him even more exciting is the reveal that happens later showing that he's actually part of a cult of blue-robed individuals designated to helping messengers like yourself throughout time. And that's where one of the game's major twists come into play: time travel. At a certain point in the game, the ability to hop back and forth through time becomes one of the game's major gameplay mechanics. It litters the environment with portals that allows the messenger to reach previously inaccessible areas due to the environment changing with time. On top of this, the game's technical art style changes from 8-bit to 16-bit, as does the music. The ninja himself also receives a costume change into a style that I've personally always been a fan of. Did I forget to mention that you also get a grappling hook and the ability to glide and even run on water? But let's talk about the other twist that made me truly learn to appreciate the messenger. When the game finally reveals to you what is actually happening, it opens up in a way that I truly wasn't expecting. While the first half of the game is a tried and true action platformer with cool time traveling mechanics, the second half of the game suddenly evolves into a Metroidvania, allowing you to revisit locations to gather specific items that are needed to unlock the true final battle. It just feels like something you would see as what most games of this nature would turn into a true ending situation, requiring things like 100% item collection or beating the game on the hardest difficulty. And while I wasn't completely into the idea of the game giving you slightly obtuse hints on where to find the items needed for the story, I did appreciate them giving you a reason to revisit previous levels to reach new areas that you could not before. Some of those areas would bridge into entirely new levels on top of that. The game just oozes content in a way that most games like this just don't. I felt like I had robbed the developer with how much game there is in this already fantastic package. At the end of the day, The Messenger is a game about challenge and simplicity. It doesn't bog down the player with endless side quests or tries to be overly realistic to the point of detrimental enjoyment. It's a game that borrows from gaming history's greats and truly understands what it is that made them great to begin with, and then added its own spin to it that doesn't hurt or ruin any of it, but instead complements it with expertly crafted game design. It's a game that's not afraid to simply be a video game. And did I mention just how amazing the soundtrack is? You probably already noticed that with the songs I've peppered throughout the video. And while the game's true ending is admittedly a little disappointing, and evidently someone on the development team agrees with this, if the achievement you get is anything to go by, the sum of its parts outweighs most of its faults. In an industry that's constantly chasing after the cinematic dream, games like this are very hard to come by, and they should be supported whenever and wherever they can. and that is why The Messenger takes the #1 spot as my favorite game of 2018.